yoga teachers, mindfulness leaders, and energy workers. Are you ready to stop side hustling and start making an income doing what you love? Welcome to the Marketing Off the Mat podcast. Each episode, your host, Jessica Cross, dives into conversations with successful creatives in wellness, business, marketing, and more to uncover practical methods to take your business from A to B and have some fun along the way. Grab some tea and pull up a seat. Let's dive into this episode.
Hey, welcome back to Marketing Off the Mat. It's Jessica. I'm so glad that you're here. And today we are joined by the lovely Pip Roberts. We're talking all about sustainability and yoga business. As teachers, as yoga studio business owners, facilitators, we take on a lot. And Pip shares deeply from her lens on building a sustainable business and what she's actually doing in real time to make that happen. So it's going to be a great episode. So let me tell you a little bit more about Pip. Pip is based in Southwest UK in Bristol. She's a yoga facilitator, mentor, Reiki practitioner, heavy meditator, sound therapist, and the creator of Now Studio in Bristol, and a well-being event curator and producer. She says that her role is that of a connector, which I so absolutely love. She's deeply passionate about the practices that hold us to connecting deeper to ourselves. And in that connection to ourselves, the connection that we find to everything else. You are going to love this episode. Let's dive in. Hey, Pip, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for saying yes. I'm so glad that you're here.
You are welcome. You're welcome.
So we got to hear a little bit about you in the intro, but I know that's just a tiny facet of who you are. So I'd love to know a little bit more about you and how it brought you to today.
I'm Pip. I'm in Bristol in the southwest of the UK. I've been sharing yoga now for 10 years or so, maybe. And at the moment, I'm really kind of focusing more on people connecting to themselves and how that connection to themselves plays out in what they share to other people. And they can find the confidence in where they're at with that.
Yeah. And I think that I love that. That's it sounds like such a simple principle and also like very tough to cultivate. And
exactly.
It's a core part of awareness practices such as yoga.
Yeah. And I think that so often what we practice is not necessarily played out in how we offer our things to people. The business side of it perhaps eclipses the embodied side of it, if that makes sense.
Ooh, yes. This is going to be such a good chat. I can already tell. I love it. Yeah. So, we heard a little bit about you, and I know you own a studio. You have so many things going on. And so we're talking about in this episode, we're talking about building a sustainable yoga business. You have this embodied practice that you're rolling out into the business side of you, into the business side of things that you offer out into the world. How is the embodiment kind of playing into all of this?
It's where it all starts and finishes for me. It's such a beautiful tool, and the body, and I feel that the more we start to explore it on the mat, the more we can stay with that connection off the mat, and it can start to empower and inspire us separately. The non-dual nature of this world, we need to be here in our bodies as well as there on the outside of us, like living, breathing, doing the weekly shop, cleaning the house, creating a business perhaps, or sharing the arts in a way that makes sense to people. And these threads that we can learn through practice, the whole point in the practice is that we begin to live it. These two things aren't separate, and to be able to really bring your practice into how you're conducting your sharing of it And finding that alignment with yourself is game changing, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely game changing, and maybe potentially elusive at times.
Oh God, yeah, it's really challenging. It's really challenging, because I feel that we're pulled in all sorts of directions, as teachers, as sharers, as facilitators, whatever we call ourselves. There is the tug of perceived success. There is the tug of mortgage payments, the heating bill, all the really, really simple, grounded stuff. And then there's this tug of the soul and the things that make your cells buzz, and these absolutely vast experiences that we may have on the mat that we are desperate to share. And the question of how palatable, I guess, are they to the people that might be coming by for your practices, and how often you can serve that stuff too. Does that make sense?
Oh, so much sense.
Some things are really easy to deliver in a 60-minute class on a Tuesday evening when everybody's running from work to the studio and then home for their tea or their dinner, let's call it that. And other things are perhaps, a week-long journey that you need to take people on. And it's figuring out the balance of how you can share these things. I think that's the trick. Yeah.
Yes, it's a balancing act for sure, and pun intended. I mean, we're talking to yoga teachers. I have the worst dad jokes. I didn't warn you about that.
I love a dad joke. Anybody that practices with me will be testament to that fact. Yes.
Me too. I love when I meet a kindred spirit in this way. It's so fun. So
but yeah, yes. There's this huge kind of non-dual, massive cosmic element to a lot of what I share. Huge deep dives into the body, and then also there's dad jokes. Those two things are pretty much fundamental. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's really special, actually, because, as much as we're giggling because, we love and we benefit from a good dad joke. I think it's so true that we do, and we share it with our students, because a lot of the stuff that we deal with day in, day out, making the mortgage payment, looking at the news, seeing, yet another tragedy that is a headline, and to be able to offer people a space to process and to practice and cultivate, even though when stuff is really, really hard, the ability to be embodied and have a little bit of levity so we can go back out seemingly into, potentially the same situation over and over again. It's like we're building that muscle.
Exactly. And the practices, I feel that quite often people offer yoga as an escape, and they're like, retreat away from life. And in fact, what I would like practices to be is more open to all of life, because the last thing we actually want to do is close ourselves off and pretend stuff isn't happening, because that's not going to help anybody. Admittedly, sometimes a little bit of respite is a beautiful thing. You can dust yourself down, patch yourself up, and get back out there. But for me, these practices are so that we can handle life in all of its emotions and states, and all of the jewels and the richness that it offers. The good times and the bad, but nothing obviously is inherently good or bad. But we just like to label it as such because it helps us.
Yeah. We want it to be.
Exactly. It all just is, I guess.
Yeah. I love this. It's not I think the wellness culture, the yoga culture, and yoga studio culture in some ways too can be all good vibes only. And it's just not the case. Like, it's unfortunate. Of course we would love that, but that's not reality. Yeah. So like you said, it's so important to offer respite and have the ability to take a beat, like step away for just a minute. So not that you live there, we don't go into the cave in the mountains and stay, but as householder practices, many of us listening do practice in that way. We have to have the ability to meet the challenges however and whenever they arise, because that they will.
Even here's a beautiful non-dual thing. Even feeling really, really good in the last few years has started to become challenging, because everybody is going through so much. During COVID, people were feeling bad when other people, when they felt good, they would then start to feel bad because so many people felt bad around them. They couldn't even be with that. It's also multifaceted. But yeah, the whole ethos of people coming as they are is incredibly important for me in my studio, and anything I offer as well. Turn up exactly as you are, because that's the only place you are, right?
So true.
Yeah,
it's so true.
And if you can't be there, then take your time.
That's powerful teaching right there. And I think it rolls right into yoga teachers, yoga studio owners, wellness entrepreneurs building their businesses, because it's not easy, despite what Instagram would love to show you. Like, the highlight reels sure look fun, but it's not all good vibes only. It's looking at your P&L and seeing that, wow, the L was pretty strong last month. Like, how do we balance? How do we pay our rent? How do we pay our mortgage? How do we make a living doing something that we're so passionate about and sharing? So, I know that this is something obviously you're really passionate about too. So we want to continue to share. We want to continue to show up, because we care so much about this practice. How do teachers do this? How do studio owners do this as well in a sustainable way?
Wow. I share, sorry, let me start that sentence again. Most of the practices I share are really heavy on rest. Rest is our true nature, right? If you look around you at plants and animals, they're not doing anything. They're just hanging out and being, and that's their natural way. And in rest, we can find our natural way. So I think that one of the most important things we can do if we're working in wellness is not do anything. Like, take your time and be. If you're going to be sharing practices, even if your practices aren't restful, you need to take your time to be. And obviously that being can come in any way, but being is accessible and true for you. Okay. Some people might be in a handstand. I'm not one of them. So, but if that's where you find that beingness and that naturalness and that place where things can arrive and things can leave with no force, things come and go, then that's the place we need to spend more time at. So when we allow ourselves to be and things can arrive and leave, this is where we maybe find that sense of ease and naturalness. And in the arrival, we might find ideas, energy, creativity, just opening to possibilities. Okay. In that space that we can create in the being, anything can happen. You're creating a transition, basically. And if we allow that to happen, then the world is literally our oyster. And the things that we can leave, the stuff we don't need to hold on to. Cliched yoga sentence, if ever I've heard one. But any things that aren't working for us, you can just see the sense in them moving through. Relationships, ideas, practices, things that you don't need to carry on, they can just go. I was talking this week about Yoga Nidra and the creative power of it. I share so much Yoga Nidra, and in that Nidra state, when you're fully aware, relaxed, but asleep, or everything in its duality right there in your senses, there's this huge ability to visualize, but maybe rather than a visualization, because not all of us are visual thinkers, maybe it's more of an imagination. And in that state you can imagine almost anything happening, right? We've all been on those wonderful journeys in meditation, and if our mind is such a limiting thing in our day-to-day life, but our mind has already experienced this vast opportunity in our nidra states when we're being, how's that going to play out for you in your business, in the sharing, in your arts, in your passion, whatever you want to call your teaching? If you can allow your practices to really expand you, that's going to play through in what you share, right? And what's going to play through into your life too. So that's my tenement, basically. Don't do as much, which is really difficult.
It really is. Yes, it so is. I think when you kind of look at the online marketer world, where it's like, have you got your funnel put together? What's your email list like? How many posts or how many times are you posting reels? Like all these little like to-do lists of things that are somehow going to all come together and just make this incredibly successful business. And you're like, well, what if it actually were, just as you were saying, Pip, taking some time to just be and allow the things to surface, and actually maybe that long list that online marketer was sharing is helpful in some ways, but maybe you just take a small piece.
No, you can maybe do it all as well.
Or maybe you can't.
Maybe that online marketer knows the steps to take, okay, but you can't force creativity. That online marketer hasn't mentioned the quality of the reel, perhaps. You still need to put out good stuff. Your stuff still needs to be engaging. You want it to come across as you. That's really important. We don't need any more copycat yogis, probably. What we do need is probably. There'll always be space for everybody. But it's even better when everybody shows up with themselves, because everybody's voice resonates with their people. And there's a lot of people that aren't practicing yoga that would like to. There's a lot of people that are already practicing yoga that want a new, fresh voice, a new take on stuff. Each time the practices are shared and they get embodied by somebody, which is very different to the practices being shared and repeated. The words get found from the sentence, the feelings of the body, and that person's take on it for them. So when the practices get embodied and then shared on, then they become richer, perhaps, each time. And everything evolves. And I'm using the word ancient loosely, ancient from the sutras, okay, not like asana ancient, which is a very different meaning of ancient. So like old sutra scripts, and how they play out in the modern world, and a personal take on that and a felt sense on that is going to shift people way more than something that is a simple repeated statement that somebody's heard before. So finding
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to double down on that. I loved it. Okay. Keep going.
So finding ourselves, like the yogic self, and our take on how it is to be a human in this day, and how it is to be a part of something bigger, that brings more meaning to it, I think. And another voice to it, another experience of it. And each day that we practice, of course, our experience of something might be completely different.
Yes, it does evolve. For sure.
I know that when I've shared practices and we talked about them on teacher trainings afterwards, there can be 30 people there, and each of the 30 people who have done they've not done the same practice, they have been in the room and I have shared exactly the same words. Their practice has all been their practice. Everybody has had wildly different experiences, and it's wild, isn't it?
Yep.
And the richness in texture and emotion that can be felt all within the same shala is such a beautiful thing. And from one sharing, one guiding of one session, 30 people can come away with something else different from everyone else in that shala, that then theirs, and that richness, that jewel that they found, then inspires their teaching down the line as well. It's just beautiful. And that for me is where we really start to find ourselves, when we feel into our own practice, sieve out the stuff that doesn't resonate and find the stuff that really does and what it means to us. And that's the goal to share on.
Yeah. I love that. I love so much of what you said too. And thinking about, not needing more copycat yogis, or not needing more teachers parroting exactly maybe what their teacher has offered, or some video that they watched or whatever, instead of embodying it and taking that nugget of wisdom that just, we know the difference between like when you've parroted something as a teacher and something that's like, this is the wisdom that I learned and integrated and shared out. Like, it's a totally different experience. Yeah. And I think the same goes to our business too.
Yes, totally. That's the whole point. The two things aren't separate. Like, nothing's separate, is it? And so I've got a few strands within wellness. So I teach, I mentor, I host teacher trainings, I run a studio, I curate wellness areas at festivals. And throughout all of these, my practice still really, really weighs heavy on how decisions are made, how things play out, and where the plans come from. And they might all be in the same kind of industry, but it's still the yoga that's creating it all. That's where it's all coming from. And I think it makes it way more fun.
Oh, totally.
It makes it way more fun. I used to work in pharmaceuticals. I did for a long period of time when I was younger as a pharmaceutical sales rep and a performance coach as well. And there you're making big decisions with literal millions of pounds at this point, which is insane. And I look back and I'm like, God, I was young to be doing that stuff. And everything was very cerebral, very data driven. And it was like, we should do this, and everything weighed up because of the numbers. Whereas now I'm like, I kind of feel like I'm drawn towards this. And it's like, if I had a manager, they'd be like, but why? I'm like, because my heart's telling, my gut's just saying yes. That's a way more fun way of listening to your body and taking cues from this amazing system that is here to guide us, right? That's the whole point in these cells. And our bodies, they built themselves from some tiny little spirals of proteins that code everything. Yeah, each of our cells found its perfect place in our body. And all of the plans are there in that literal microscopic sense. So learning to trust that the body has a wider plan, I think it's a beautiful ride. Yeah.
Also to someone who was trusted with millions of dollars at a very young age. It's so much more fun to you know what? I actually am feeling called to explore this a little bit. What would it look like if, and go down that road instead of saying, well, that doesn't meet our quarterly KPIs. And, that's something that would take multiple layers of red tape to get approved. And you're like, no,
Exactly. There's not
It's
6 layers of people to get the green light for it, is there?
yeah,
Um,
it's so much more
yeah, it's like,
exciting. Yeah.
it's Tuesday. I think I'll do it. Yeah.
Yes, it's a perfect day to start something like that. That's so powerful too. And it can be, I don't know if this is true for you. When I first, embarked officially full time into my business, I was a little unsteady at first because we kind of look outward for the approval, the numbers, the KPIs, whatever it is that was the driving force behind the decisions that we would make.
Yeah.
So I think it takes some time for us to turn up our inner wisdom that's been there the whole time, but we just have to create the space for it with rest.
Yeah. But you see it all the time, even in the yoga world. People are like, oh, you only have this many followers, your classes are empty. How many people, their class is fully booked, and they're posting about it on their stories. Why have I only got 5 people in today? It's like, those 5 people are your people, and they're spending money with you, and they really need you. It's very easy to slip into comparison mode and forget why you're wanting to do the thing that you're doing, or share the things that you want to share. There is a meme about, I've become a yoga teacher just so I can play all my playlists, people. Because I couldn't be a DJ. And sometimes I think that might be partly true for people. It shifted into almost a popularity contest and everything. And it's about drawing back. Yes, obviously, for your business to be a success, you need some people to come. That's the truth. But in order for people to come, I think you need to show up as yourself. I quite often say that half the challenge in finding a teacher is finding somebody that you can spend 60 minutes or 90 minutes in the company of and want to go back for more. Right? Yeah. I don't care how you've told me how to find a cobra. That's not really what I've come for. It's for the way that you make me maybe inquire into my body, or the way you talk. It's really simple. But yeah, it's who can I tolerate being with as much as anything else these days.
Sometimes I wonder why some of my students come back, because I'm like, I'm such a nerd at the front of the room sometimes. But it's true. Like, you have to shine that light, because the people that are out there waiting for it can't see you otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that, just to come back to your nerdiness, I am quite a geek, and but I think that there's a lot of people that are, right? And
yes,
I said, we don't need any more copycat people. Yoga robots aren't very interesting to hang out with for 60 minutes. Real people are. And I think that the more real people show up as, the more engaging it's going to be. It's not to do a show about their lives, but to be very, very human, when yoga has done such a job of whatever it's done to its image. To show up as yourself is a really powerful thing.
Yeah, it's very vulnerable and very powerful.
Yeah. Totally.
It's good stuff. So if you're listening, you weren't already invigorated by the jokes that we've shared, and just thinking about touching back into your own inner wisdom and your own voice and putting yourself out there and trying things. If you're feeling really burnt out, Pip, what kind of options or opportunities or advice would you offer to folks that are listening in, who are either feeling burnt out, or perhaps they are in one of these, parroting modes where they're not exactly sure, where their North Star is? Like, what advice would you have to offer them today to help them best right the ship, so to speak?
First, don't be in a hurry to fix everything. everything is seasonal. Yeah, and we will have moments when these cycles are playing out in our artistry, because I genuinely think that yoga, or to share yoga, there is quite a lot of artistry involved. You know, any creative will tell you that there's spells where things dry, and then there's spells where literally everything is coming through you almost too fast for you to paint it or write it down, right? So just accept that if we've got ourselves into a burnout, that is a little bit different than a dry spell. I have been burnt out. I've definitely been burnt out twice in my life. One was after a huge project all summer, which was very fun, but very stressful, and there wasn't enough rest involved at all. And the other one was running my studio during COVID times, which was immensely stressful. My studio had opened 4 months before COVID hit. So great timing. Thanks. And both of those things, I was under enormous stress, physically, mentally, emotionally, for a sustained period of time. And when you're burnt out, it's going to take you longer than a weekend to right yourself. Okay. So if you are truly burnt out, you need to be able to cut back and give yourself as much time as possible. I know that there is a certain amount of privilege that comes with being able to take time off work. I know that yoga teachers often don't have much. It's wealth, isn't it? Wealth is the amount of time that you can go without working. That's one of the definitions of it. And if you aren't particularly wealthy, as in your overheads are high every month and you still have to pay them, then that's difficult. I see that. I acknowledge that. But your body is so important, and it does need to rest, you know, in order for you to come back stronger. The trick to not burning out, I think, is perhaps the key in all of this. So just we want everything to have some sustainability. You know, what was it called? Planned obsolescence is something I was reading about yesterday. We get it with phones, computers, and it's only going to last this long, okay, before you need to get a new one, before you need to upgrade. And this is something that I see quite often with people's practices. They're like, oh, there's planned obsolescence. I'm going to do this for 4 months. It's only 4 months, I can do it. And the pace that they work at is basically planning their own obsolescence. I've done it before myself, yeah. And you work at such an intensity that eventually you come into this state of collapse. You're working at such an intensity, you're literally propping and holding so much up, you know. And then eventually, after that propping, there inevitably comes that opposite, the collapse, everything losing its tone. And it's really simple. Again, just like I was saying at the start, we need to rest, we need to build a sustainable business. But like we said before, the simple stuff is often the most difficult. It is really difficult. And building a sustainable business, you know, it does depend where we are on our journey with sharing and what it is we do share. And again, it's your body that's going to tell you what is what. When I lived in London, I used to teach, I think, 14 classes a week at one point. And I'd be zooming around places. It's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot. And now I teach 2. I am doing other work. But now I'm way more able to show up for those 2 monthly workshops than I am if I was doing 14 a week now. By other work, I mean the mentoring and the managing the studio and all of the other stuff, as opposed to, I don't have a 9 to 5 in another industry. as well as all of that, just for
Right.
complete clarity.
Right.
In case people are like, what? She's doing what now? There's different threads all there that allow me to show up and teach twice a week.
Mhm.
I'm in my 40s now as well. I was in my early 30s when I started teaching. And so I think that again has a huge impact on energy levels. The cycles that maybe lead us through creativity and quieter times, let's call them that, also are there within our life cycle, right? We when we're young, we can punch out 20 power yoga classes in a week. If you're going to be trying to do that when you're 45, then I think you might have a surprise, or most people will have a surprise. It's really simple things that we can do to sustain ourselves within the amount that we share as well.
Yeah.
Do you need to demonstrate so much? Is the question I always, you can guide from the side of a classroom. You don't need to be, brackets, probably shouldn't be doing your own practice if you're watching what's going on in the room.
Mhm.
And that is, I think, one of the most elegant ways to meet your energy when you're sharing as well. You can still show people some stuff, but you're not, definitely not breaking a sweat.
Right. Yes.
Unless you're in a hot room.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a gentle way. You're not there doing your practice. You're there guiding other people through theirs. And I think that shift from, again, you're being in the room, you're not doing the practice, is a huge step towards finding that sustainability. The other thing so you've got to be sharing the right amount for your energy, basically. That's the biggest thing, I think, in terms of working in a sustainable manner. Your output can't exceed your input, basically. But the biggest thing, which is a vague word on purpose, the biggest thing that will affect how much energy anything takes from you is how aligned it is with you, I think. So over the course of my sharings, I've taught in spaces, and they've been great to start with, and then after a while it's like, I don't know, in America, if you've got the expression, you get the ick.
No.
You get the ick in it. Okay, so
but tell us more, but I think I know what you're saying.
I will tell you more. It happens in romantic relationships. You can really, really, really love them for a short period of time, and then suddenly you get the ick. It might be a pair of shoes they put on, something super, super small, and you're just, oh my god, I can't stand them anymore. It might be a word that they used in a conversation. You're like, done.
It's over.
It's over. And you literally get the ick. And quite often, because romantic relationships, you're really listening to your body, and that's what it is, isn't it? It's that tug of your body towards somebody, or indeed away, as the ick will turn it to. And we can get the ick with our work too, I think, and suddenly, or not so suddenly, our relationship with a space, a practice, something can shift, and it just begins to not align with us. And showing up there once that is no longer resonating with us,
right,
can become to really, really, really drain us. So it's staying aware of how hosting something or sharing something really makes you feel. Not everything lasts forever. And that's fine. Quite often something dies away so that something else can come in its place. Endings are beginnings, all of those things that are true. But allowing yourself to be open to these things happening means that you can manage your energy so much better. And that then you're, if something isn't working out for you anymore, and you don't have to know why. Yeah, this is what I was saying about the fun bit about your body guiding you through this stuff. You can be like, I just don't want to teach there anymore, or I don't want to share that Tuesday morning class that I've been doing for 3 years now online, even though there's 20 people coming every week. It's not feeding me.
Right.
That's not a truth in my world. But even if something is ticking lots of boxes, but it isn't hitting home with you, that's when it's really important to be really honest with yourself and be like, I want to try something new, or quite simply, I don't want to do that anymore. And then once you don't have to replace something with another. Again, you can enter that emptiness. You can let yourself sit in the dark a little bit sometimes and just let that go. Give yourself that space and see what comes out, see what shows up next. Because that's exciting.
It is. It really is. Yeah. And I
and
think
scary sometimes.
Exactly. I think sometimes the anticipation of it is a little more scary than actually saying, you know what, actually, I'm not feeling that anymore. And instead of replacing it, one for one with this other class or offering or, whatever it is that it is, just to have a little open space so that you can be and listen to what might come up, and you might actually like it. You might find something exciting.
It might be something terrible as well that comes up. You're like, what is that? But the beautiful thing is that whatever comes up for us, it's right for us in that moment, or it's a possibility in that moment. But that moment is only also that moment. Okay, so for that now, that was what your intuition or your vision saw for you, and in the next moment that might be completely changed. I've had such huge visions come when I've been in sound baths, like entire business plans, interior design for venues, everything has come, and I've been like, whoa, okay, I need to write something down.
Yes.
Afterwards, and then scribbled it all down and gone, well, that was really strong, and so that's obviously got to happen. And then beavered off and made inquiries because that it was so immense and I could feel it all. And then things didn't happen then straight away, and it's just kind of left as a page in a book, maybe for when the time is right for it, but this is one of the most beautiful things. It shows you the potential and the possibility, and perhaps allows you to explore possibility. Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Because not everything has to be completely true. You don't have to do everything that you ever dream.
Right.
It can be nice to, but you've got more time usually.
Yes, and I love that you said it, that you explored it, and you're like, well, maybe it, like as you said, as a page in the book, like maybe I turn back, maybe I earmark that page and I come back later, but you gave rise to it instead of just being like, well, what was that, and then on to the next 5 things on your list.
Yeah, exactly. It's still there, it's still percolating gently. And I genuinely think that when the time's right, it'll happen.
I agree. Okay, so this is a question I ask most of my guests because I love the answers that come from this, and I know yours is going to be so powerful too, just from all that you've already shared. So if you go back at any point in your yoga career or as a student or any previous version of you, and you could whisper in your ear a little something that would save you a sleepless night or a headache or two, what would it be?
That's such a great question.
It's a
I
thought
have
provoker.
got so much advice for myself. I think it would probably just be, it gets easier. Yeah, because it does. It's not easy, but it gets easier. And yeah, I might email you another answer to that as well. Once I've heard it, once it's percolated. I think that's there's so much you could go with on that.
It's good.
But yeah, I found to explain why it gets easier. I realized just how disconnected I had been from my emotions and my body at some point when I for my emotions, I went to therapy and didn't have the language to even talk about how I felt beyond sad. Which is, it's a very British thing, right? Don't talk about our feelings. Make light of the situation. And also, I remember clearly the first time I felt anything subtle in a yoga practice, and I was in India, classic, on a beach in Goa, again, classic. But I did this practice and I felt this spiraling right in my center. And I was like, what the actual, like, that's real. And those two moments really like define or seem like lines in the sand of me coming back to feeling in my body, because I used to be so heady, a not stupid child at school, and everything, exams, tick, tick, tick. How can I do things and not really try very much? And coming back to my body it's been so challenging. If you spend 30 years not listening, there's a lot of stuff that's shouting when you come in.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah. So, your body's screaming and shouting, and it's quite an intense place. Feeling anything is quite intense sometimes, isn't it? But with the freshness and the newness of feeling, it was really challenging. It still is really challenging to be in my body some days. I think that is true for most people. But knowing that it will get easier on the journey to feeling possibly would have made some hopeless days feel less hopeless.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. But I feel that's a really common journey. I quite often have people come to practice who are very in their heads, or people who are in the space above themselves, which is where I have also spent a lot of time. Quite nice up there. Everything makes sense, rather than it being felt. It's very factual, which it's quite pleasant sometimes.
Yeah, it's very reassuring.
But seeing people traveling the same journey of coming back to themselves is one. It really, really, really gives me a sense of fulfillment, and yeah, it's a beautiful thing to witness. We're not doing anything when we're guiding people towards themselves. It's the people doing the work, and it is a lot of work. We know that, but it's a really beautiful thing to witness. And if you are on that path, it gets easier. That's that's what we all need to remember.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. A quote comes to mind from a teacher of mine, and she always says, "It won't always be this way," which I am very much a likening to. It gets easier. It gets,
yes.
When you're scared to be at the front of the room, and or you're embarking on trying to make this thing work, whatever the thing is for you. It gets easier. It's not always going to be this way. So that's really good. It's really good. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Yeah. So I want to know, and I'm sure everybody who's listening does too, what kind of cool things do you have coming up? How can we hang out with you? Yeah.
I've got loads of good things.
Wonderful.
I made a new plan for myself for this year, and I'm doing one good thing a month, like one great thing on my quest for sustainability, so that my diary doesn't get over full. So you can take that. Things that I'm doing that I'm really excited about. I've got a retreat in June that I'm announcing this week with some ridiculously amazing food, which is fine. Which I feel is at least 80% of the reason I ever go on retreats. So
me too.
So that's why it's weighing heavy in that. Oh no, that's in July. And then in October, I'm hosting Rested Being, which is an immersion into the art of rest. So tantra, somatics, restorative yoga, sound, all of them coming together and really informing your language and creating embodied yoga nidra. I've got one of them in March as well, but that one's sold out. So October is the next chance for that. Yes.
That sounds incredible. Both offerings do. So we'll be sure to share those in the show notes so people can check them out. And
Cool.
then
Thank you.
we hang out with, of course, how can we hang out with you online if we want to follow along?
You can sign up to my newsletter at piproberts.com, the very imaginatively named website. And Instagram, I am Pip Roberts with 2 underscores after my name. That's where I'm most active, I think. But come and find me in real life in Bristol, or sharing online practices too.
Yes. Yeah, we would, and we can love to share your studio too. So we can drop the handle in the show notes as well, so people can follow along. Of course. Well, thank you, Pip. This was so much fun. I loved chatting with you, and I know everyone got so much out of it as well. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. Have yourself a lovely day.
You too.
Cheers.
Oh, thank you, Pip. I had such a blast with you. This is such a fun chat, and I know that the listeners got just as much as I did out of our talk. So I'm just so grateful to you and for your time. So if you guys want to check out Pip, you can find her online at Pip Roberts. And she also has her studio called Now Studio, which you can check out the show notes here. I'll add link to both her website and to Now Studio, so you can check out all the incredible offerings that she mentioned that are coming up here in 2023. So if you find yourself in the UK, maybe you'll go meet Pip and tell her that we sent you from Marketing Off the Mat. Okay, thank you so much for being here, for all of your time and energy, and for all that it is that you do out in the world. We are so grateful for you. We need you, so keep showing up.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Off the Mat podcast, and give yourself some gratitude for taking action in your wellness business journey. Please share this episode with someone you know who could use a fresh dose of inspiration. And we'd be thrilled if you would rate, review, and subscribe to Marketing Off the Mat on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Want to share an idea with Jessica? DM her at jessicacross.co on Instagram to continue the conversation, or find out how she can help you take the next right step in your business. Until next time, stay inspired and keep showing up.